about Illuminati, since the charting of P-Ducks. Is it Disney mind control? Is this MK Ultra Deluxe? Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, should know what to chat for. Occult Disney, Peter Pan, Pinocchio. Occult Disney, as a bomb so low. Pinocchio seeks fun on Pleasure Island, where traffickers meet just for the mind. Captain Hook, a lost boy in Neverland, saving kids from Peter Pan's designs. Nemo feels to survive the Barracuda, and that nobody needs no one. Snow White never took another breath. Bird Prince, the angel of death has come. Occult Disney, we go from real to real. Occult Disney, Bohemian Grove and no more real. Occult Disney, ask about to Illuminati. Occult Disney, we teach occult to everybody. Occult Disney, go wish upon a star. Occult Disney, you know what to chat for. Oh, Occult Disney, the new brand Pinocchio. Yeah, yeah. Occult Disney, it's a bomb so we go. Occult Disney, please enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to the Occult Disney podcast. It's where we take every film and shred it apart to find the magic inside. I don't know if shredding film would do anything for you anyway. I was just watching Inglourious Bastards again, where they light all the film because it's made of nitrate, you know?
Welcome to the Occult Disney podcast, where we burn down and melt the old films and huff them and hallucinate and tell you about the visions that we see from another plane.
There you go. Little balls of nitrate you can put in your pipe. Hi, this is Matt here. Over there, it's Paranoid American. Howdy.
Howdy, howdy.
We're going into the jungle today. It's Tarzan, 1999. Two very important questions. The drum fill and Phil Collins in the air tonight, yes or no?
Sure.
Okay. And if you're being honest, are you a Tarzan guy or are you a George of the Jungle guy?
Probably more Tarzan, although it might have changed since the research into this one, as it does.
Oh yeah, Edgar Rice Burroughs probably has a few things I've never heard about, but there's an interesting. Is stink the right word? Can I use stink on this one?
Yeah, I would say stank.
Stank. Okay, I can smell the stank on this one, but yeah, no, I was always a little more of a George guy because I like, stupid cartoons. Weirdly, this is like the first major Tarzan produced animation, which apparently surprised the execs making it. But yeah, George has the song. It's got the Brendan Fraser movie, And
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't George of the Jungle more of like a Bullwinkle vibe to it?
Yeah, I think the Bullwinkle themed restaurants in the 80s did have George of the Jungle included. Dudley Do Right, George of the Jungle, and Bullwinkle. Have you ever heard of those restaurants? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about at all?
I'm not. I know about all those characters, but I don't know anything about restaurants themed after them.
Yeah, it was like a Showbiz Pizza, Chuck E. Cheese, like aimed a little higher for adults. I mean, it's still a place for kids too, but like they had a bar, right? And they had, Bullwinkle animatronics and Dudley Do Right would sing you a song and stuff. So it was
weird.
I liked it.
It was tapping
weird
into a slightly older demo, I guess, but it doesn't seem. I don't know. I was a Chuck E. Cheese kid. I like the creepy animatronics that just came with Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, in the Pizza Wars, my turf was Showbiz, so that which did turn into a Chuck E. Cheese eventually, but we did have the complete Rock-afire explosion for our birthday parties as kids.
It's sad that there are some people that grew up thinking that was pizza.
Oh, it was so depressing a few days ago. It was like a question game for my class, and the question was like, "What's the best place to get pizza?" And my student said the best place to get pizza is Domino's. I did whatever I could not to facepalm.
I mean, is that so bad in Japan? Is Domino's in Japan as bad as Domino's in the States? I'd assume it was better there.
It's pretty much the same. We actually had it at New Year's because I was feeling nostalgic and wanted to get it, and it was pretty much exactly what I remembered. And my wife absolutely hated it and said we're never getting Domino's again.
There's something to be said though about predictability. That's exactly what makes Starbucks so successful, is that you can relatively expect that no matter what part of the country you're in, your Starbucks will taste pretty much the same. Yeah. And for most people, it's not hard because it's just a bunch of like caramel macchiato pumps.
And the nostalgia factor, because I'm remembering like dumb 80s movie nights or whatever. Like in Japan, there are some people here that still notoriously eat whale, so they hunt whales. And one of the big reasons for that is post-World War II, to save money, the elementary schools would all serve whale for lunch. So now, people in their 70s and 80s are like, oh, that makes me feel like the good old days. I want to eat the whale. I accidentally ate whale once thinking it was raw tuna, but it was not. It was whale.
You monster.
Yeah. And I wonder what Tarzan... Well, of course, Tarzan's staying in the jungle in this, so that's a little different than the original story. But yeah, I was wondering what kind of nostalgia foods he would want back in England if we're going with the book version, grubs, something like that.
Yeah, they don't really show a whole lot of what the diet is because in typical Disney fashion, it's mostly like vegetarians that he hangs out with. They might end up eating bugs at a certain point, which is an interesting one. I know that Doug came right after Bug's Life, but if you went from Bug's Life right into Tarzan, then you go from, basically like falling in love with these bugs and like getting invested for hours and making sure that they're okay into this one where it's just like mass bug, holocaust, and they're just eating bugs nonstop.
Well, of course, there's the Bug's Life theory that the bugs in that movie are living in a post-human apocalypse on the Pixar timeline. So if you want to go that way, then they win in the end, right?
Well, I mean, they will win in the end.
Yeah, or the worms. We were talking about the I've already forgotten the name, but the tiny worms that make up the most biomass.
The nematodes.
They were in Doug's first movie. So
yeah, they will be here before and after us for sure.
I know this is the source material, but we've like full on, like after not doing it for several movies, it's like, let's just hit the accelerator on, Disney proxy. Your parents are dead. Welcome to Disneyland,
I had the exact same note. Like, not only is the Disney proxy back, baby, but it's like version 2.0, bigger, better, faster than ever. There's kidnapping. There's like your parents being murdered. There's all sorts of stuff. There's even a child that dies in the first 2 minutes, which is pretty intense. I mean, it's a ape child, but it's a child nonetheless that Tarzan ends up becoming like a surrogate child for. It's weird. I was trying to think back out of all the Disney movies we've seen so far. Did any of them have a child dying in the first 3 minutes? Or is this the first one?
This might be the first one. I'm just scanning my brain now to see if I can think of anything. And
there have been deaths, but I don't remember a child dying. And in this one, in the middle of the night, this like baby gorilla, this baby ape, like wakes up and sees a butterfly or something and goes and chases it, and then finds himself square off with a tiger. And it happens off screen, but the tiger massacres this little baby gorilla. Like, it just absolutely gets massacred, and you can see the reaction of the parents as they watch it happen directly in front of them. And then it goes into a Phil Collins song about how you'll like never be complete. I don't know what the exact lyrics were, but it's like your baby's gone, your baby's not coming back.
And I don't know, I had just a little inner giggle because they show us like a full minute of the parents struggling to rebuild a life in the jungle and the treehouse, and all for naught. There they go.
Oh, so now we're talking about Tarzan. Yeah. So immediately after the gorillas lose their baby, then we see the story of Tarzan, where then his parents end up dying, and they also die. They do it off screen again, but it's like, I guess the same damn tiger ends up killing his parents as well.
But it showed them working so hard for the minute before that. I was like, oh, well, that wasn't worth it, was it? I do remember, I don't know if Florida changed it. I'm pretty sure Disneyland changed the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse to Tarzan at some point.
Oh, I mean, the last time that I was actually there, and I believe that's a Magic Kingdom thing. Last time I was at the Magic Kingdom in Orlando, it was still Swiss Family Robinson. I mean,
Maybe
that's very nostalgic.
Maybe it's a I'm trying to think back to Tokyo now. I haven't been to Tokyo in a while, so I know at least one of them was converted to Tarzan at some point. It might be like OG Disneyland.
It would have been really easy because even in the movie, as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, that looks like the attraction from the Swiss Family Robinson.
No, that's how I remembered it, right? Because I was like, hey, this looks just like, oh, it was. That's why they did the changeover. Okay. I mean, it was a low budget theming change, really. You know, you don't have to change much at all.
So it would have been interesting if they had like the post version where it's just like overgrown and there's like blood on the floor and broken glass still. But this is definitely Disney proxy on steroids because you got a kid dying, you got parents dying, and then you've got parents that have lost a child. So now is Disney tapping into a separate market now? So in addition to the kids that are being left alone, now they're also going to tap into anyone that's ever lost a kid in the first 2 minutes. And like, let's start burning this candle at both ends in terms of marketing.
Could they be tapping a bit on, millennial Y2K fever as well? Like, the idea that you all be struggling this much soon because society is going to collapse. I mean, they could be tapping.
Right. You're all going to be living in the jungle again.
Yeah. Everything goes back to basics in the worst way possible. Now, I remember, I'm pretty sure I did not see this in the theater, but I did get the DVD because I think this is one people don't remember. Like A Bug's Life was kind of one of your showcase DVDs. I guess Disney was just really, banging on those at the time. The Matrix was your live action. Hey, look how cool my DVD looks. And this was another everything is digital sort of transfer like Bug's Life. So it must be the last time I did one of those like Columbia House like deals because you could do them for DVDs for a short period as well. And I don't remember how, but I always figured out a loophole where I didn't really have to buy that much in the end.
I mean, I found a loophole where I didn't have to buy anything.
That's now.
The loophole was that I would send it in and they would send me stuff to like a different name, but my address, and then I would just never pay. And I was 13. What were they going to do?
Maybe I did that. I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember what my thing
I got.
was, so.
Yeah, shout out to Columbia House, man. I got so many albums from Columbia House by just sending in fake names and getting like, I think we got up to like 60 or 80 because it was 12 at a time, right? It was either 12 or 20 at a time. It was like 12 for a penny. And you didn't even have to send a penny in.
Yeah, I remember my particular angle was with the other one, BMG. I don't remember. I remember the other one. You didn't get as much up front, but it was easier to finesse the system.
Well, yeah, whatever one it was, like we just kept hitting that button over and over again.
Right.
The only downside is that they didn't have every single album, so you were limited to like.
Oh, there was a lot missing.
There was a lot, but they didn't have everything.
I mean, it's like going to a record store. You get what's there, right? Of course, with them, you didn't get weird indies. And I do remember Tarzan kind of being like, oh, I need to choose one more movie. Well, that's supposed to look really good on DVD. I'm not sure how much I was really... I mean, this was 1999. That was like an insane film year. So Tarzan was not really on my radar when you could go see Fight Club, hasn't aged well, but American Beauty, Biggie, The Matrix again. I mean, it was just like such an election, such an insane film year that, Tarzan, you don't notice so much because it's, well, we'll talk about the background, but as a production, of course, the animation's like, top rate. But yeah, I guess I'm not like the biggest fan of a jungle adventure. I like the African Queen. That's fun, but...
It wasn't bad. I kind of like this one. I think they did the 3D exceptionally well. That was
great.
A few scenes in there where whatever they were doing, I actually don't even know the exact process, but they made like what looked like a matte painting background turn into 3D. There was one with like a treasure chest, I think, and just the way the camera was moving, I could tell that a lot of effort went into it, and it looked immaculate. So at this point, they've really caught on to whatever the hell their technique is.
I can spit that name at you in a moment. I was on the general Tarzan page, not the Disney one, so you have to be on that to get it. I want to say it's called Deep Valley. Production, development, writing.
This is the production house.
No, this is the 3D method they were using. Sorry, I'm scanning as I'm blabbing. 3D artist or Deep Canvas, excuse me. So
it looked great, yeah. So whatever they were doing for this Deep Canvas, it looked really damn good. And I think there's another thing too. Unless you had younger siblings, there's almost no reason that for either of us, once, I don't know, Goofy movie era sort of comes out, right? Like, there's no reason that we're going to be watching Disney movies unless it's, I guess you were taking your date to, what was it again? Your date to Bug's Life?
Not A Bug's Life. What did I take a date to? I talked about Titanic because every girl wants to see Titanic.
It wasn't Doug. I hope it wasn't Doug.
It was not Doug. I didn't take a girl to Doug. Oh, James and the Giant Peach. That was the one where I was talking.
Okay. But anyways, like once you've kind of grown out of Disney, right? Then you don't really get back into it unless you're one of those weird Disney people. Shout out to all you weirdos. You should be on a watch list. But also until like you or your friends start having kids, and then Disney has a reason to like pop its head back up into your life. But there's I couldn't really think of a lot of reasons outside of, some new big 3D movie is going to come out and they're touting the technology behind it, or one of those big like marketing draws. But in terms of catching every single movie, maybe if you were like a Bill Collins fan and you were like, I just want to go and see a Bill Collins concert animated by Disney, which is kind of like that.
I really did like Peter Gabriel, who would have made more sense as well musically. So that actually probably, turned me off a little bit. So as I'm like, yeah,
what did you would have preferred Peter Gabriel instead of Phil Collins?
He got the same voice. He writes better songs, and more like, he had more of the. I mean, saying a British white man is doing world music doesn't feel quite right, but he was trying to, right? So it seemed to make more sense in this setting. By the way, Deep Canvas, the big development over what they were using in Hunchback and Milan with for this. So the Deep Canvas software keeps track of brush strokes applied in 3D space. So if you do a digital brush stroke on the tree and then move around the tree moves like an actual object is the idea here.
Yes, I mean, yeah, like leaps and bounds at this point, where even in the Hunchback, there was a few scenes that were impressive, but there was also some scenes where you could clearly see that things had developed quite a ways. And Bug's Life, I don't even want to talk about Bug's Life ever again. Like, it's not good. I didn't like it. The visual.
Visually it's terrible. Yeah. I was about to say, I like the movie, but it is, increasingly forgettable as time goes on, I mean,
the movie's not bad. The movie's like a 6 out of 10. But the visuals are like,
yeah, it looked like, again, we compared that to a PlayStation game where this is, it still has elements of hand drawn, right? It still has elements of 2D. So it's well composed.
I get this feeling too. Maybe it's just because I ended up seeing a game or playing a game, but this movie almost feels like they intentionally added some places just because it would make like a really cool game. Like him sliding and surfing around on the tree limbs and the vines. And then there's a scene where he's like jumping on the different crocodiles and they're all like snapping and stuff. It all just feels very much like, oh, there's probably someone in the design room that was thinking ahead to the Sega Genesis game that was going to, come out for this thing, or the PlayStation.
Yeah, isn't
game.
He in Kingdom Hearts 1, I think? Isn't Tarzan there?
Well, I assume that they've got all the classics in there. At this point, there's been so many damn Kingdom Hearts, expansions and games. They're on like version
I think
4.
it was on the first one. I think they got straight to it, maybe because of what you're saying. Here, I'm just looking at, just to respond to what you're saying. It says animator Glenn Keane was inspired to make Tarzan surf through the trees because of his son's interest in extreme sports and began working on a test scene. The directors expressed concern that Tarzan would be made into a surfer dude. But
he kind of was.
Yeah. He's got the hair. Another thing that would make that happen is this ended up, they consulted with a professor of anatomy, and that made Tarzan the first Disney character to accurately display working muscles. And they had someone at a national park show them a dissection of a gorilla so they could try and get the gorillas right, which that sounds pretty sounds like a putrid time. Okay.
Very
Swing.
necessary. Like we definitely have to see the inside of this gorilla so that we know how to animate it properly. It's the only way you're going to get us to stop tracing Baloo is that if you just let us dissect the gorilla alive.
This is an interesting intersection to have a state of the Disney, since the Jungle Book is just like 3 steps removed from Tarzan. So like there's definitely a different vibe at this point. More operatic, is that the right word? Well, not that Phil's doing opera, but
this movie has a much different vibe than the Jungle Book too, like a hugely different vibe.
Oh yeah, that's kind of my point. Like, we're looking at such a different Disney creation at this point. And hey, soon we will be looking at the Jungle Book too, because that was released theatrically, so we can also check in that way. But yeah, the basic messages that we were talking about in the 60s, especially the 60s movies, they've each decade it's a slightly different flavor. And I think we're finding with the 90s that the second half of the 90s is a pretty different flavor than the first half of the 90s.
Well, and the source material on this one goes pretty deep. It gets pretty dark.
Okay, let's do some Burroughs, since we are on a bit of a timer today. What do you got?
We can stretch a little bit. We don't need to rush this one, but
that's cool. I mean, I got a size, but hey, I'm curious too. I mean, weirdly, I pay less attention to conspiracy theories these days. So when you tell them to me, it's that's supposed to be good podcasting, right? I like authentically responding to what you're giving me.
So I guess this one's not even necessarily a conspiracy, but without bearing the lead, Tarzan is about eugenics. The entire story of Tarzan is meant to convey these like very extremist positions of eugenics in like a fictionalized manner. But Burroughs was very strong proponent of eugenics and Darwinism, and this was kind of meant, I guess, the interesting part of it is that the premise was that British aristocracy was such a pinnacle of evolution that essentially it doesn't get any better once you get into the upper class of British aristocracy. And that if you were to take a British royal or just a British, educated person and just abandon them in the middle of anywhere, abandon them in the African jungle, as far away as you can think of, that they would over time rise up and become ruler of that world if they had no other British aristocracy to compete with, because this British white baby is just so much better, so superior to all the other people and animals and beasts that are anywhere around it, that just logically it would become the best thing. And the whole premise of Tarzan is that it's him saying, look, if you take a white British baby and put him in the middle of Africa, he becomes king. And he doesn't have to try. Like, he doesn't have his parents' help. He doesn't have, that's exactly why the parents get removed from him, why he gets adopted by these gorillas, is to prove that even without any sort of external influence, without anyone putting their thumb on the scale, this British, white baby will still become the superior race.
It's kind of like a weird, truncation of the hero's journey, where we're just going to pop off the first half of that particular trope and just go right in the middle where he's rocking. There's no struggle.
It's because just the evolution of the British, I guess I'll call it a race, just so I don't have to keep saying aristocracy, but just the evolution of the British peoples in general is the hero's journey. And they've already gone through the whole loop, right? Maybe 3 or 4 times. And they're basically saying that nobody in Africa, man or animal, has even completed one loop. So at this point, the British are lapping them. And this, I mean, I'm not saying this to be, flippant. This is literally the approach and the reasoning behind the whole entire Tarzan story. And it's more complex, though. It's more complex than just this simple, they're saying, this white Tarzan. And by the way, Tarzan actually means the white skin. I think that's the translation of it. But just that this white guy is going to rule the jungle. No, it's a little bit more deep and complex, which makes it an interesting story. And that's the first wave of eugenics, is when the gorillas find this Tarzan baby and they're basically like, this is a liability. It's going to attract predators. He doesn't know how to protect himself. He can't climb trees. Like, he doesn't fit in. It would be easier if we just like leave him out to fend for himself, or if we just let him die. That would be the easiest thing. And that's kind of what the surrogate father, right, this like the quote unquote stepdad, kind of ends up saying. And the mom just like, no, we want to protect him. We want to, hold on to him. So this is that first wave of eugenics. Like in this case, the human baby it wants to be purged out. Like the gorillas want to purge this human baby out of their society because he's the weakest link to it. And by getting rid of him, then everything can kind of go back to normal and they can keep advancing. But at a certain point, he does become this superior British being, and he kind of like flips it on its head, where then he proves that he's superior to everybody. And that, I guess, over time, the implication is that they could all get phased out if only the British aristocracy were to come and move in, which is, spoiler alert, what happens at the end of the movie, is that Britain moves into Africa because they're the superior ones. They're going to tame the entire land, and they're going to like rise it up like no one else could that's already there. And again, this is not me talking. This is Burroughs talking.
Yeah, actually, there is a 2001-2002 animated series for Tarzan, which is like, it's like that weird Aladdin cartoon series where it's like, well, Jasmine and Aladdin still haven't got married. Tarzan and Jane are still like, they still haven't worked their relationship out because we need to keep everything in stasis from what you saw in the movie. That sort of thing, very much after school Disney Channel stuff.
And it's the death knell for any show to have the love interest actually get together. They always have to be like missing each other, or like they're like one's dating another one, or there's always got to be some kind of conflict. There's a very few numbers of shows that kind of deviate from that successfully.
Yeah, it's like, what point did everyone stop watching The Office?
Right.
I did want to ask when you're looking at Burroughs, though, because when you said, British race instead of aristocracy, is the idea that you could take a North Country farmer and plop him in the jungle?
No, it's specifically aristocracy.
It does need to be stiff upper lip. Okay, that's where I was getting how wide ranging because I was like, I don't think it was a nationalist thing, and the class system in England is pretty intense.
Yeah, you're not going to just grab some bumpkin Eurotrash off the side of the street. You're going to have to get like an aristocracy, well-educated Eurotrash in order to be superior in Africa.
And they can be a baby, yes.
Even that's quite literally the point being made here, is that even a baby, as long as the baby had superior genetics, then everything else doesn't matter. And I can't stress enough that is quite literally the entire reason that you would just abandon this British baby in the middle of the jungle, is simply as like a science experiment and like a thought experiment, right? Fictionally for Burroughs, of like, even if you just drop a baby in the middle of the jungle, it'll still become the best thing around.
So on Burroughs, let's give that in this case, it's that's sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit there. Okay, we got a rollicking adventure story out of a thought experiment where the original thought was a little wonky. It sounds like you're a little more down on Burroughs, so I feel like we have level 2.
Yeah, well, I'm not necessarily down. He got swept up before it got industrialized by the Germans, but I think he even gave a shout out by name to Hitler in like a newsletter that he had written that was very pro eugenics. So this was part of him getting swept up in the exact same, like Kellogg's, right? Kellogg's is still a really popular brand. I think it was called the Battle Creek Sanitarium cereal company at some point, which didn't roll off the tongue as well. But that was also basically a eugenics promoting system. Like the cereal was I won't get into the whole depths of it, but in like the Ford, automobile company, I think Ford and Hitler had like a little like bromance going on for quite a while. They were like citing each other and giving each other props. And then it gets a little bit dark, right? So as far as I know, though, Burroughs never necessarily completely recanted a lot of this, which makes it an interesting selection for a movie in '99. And I don't think that he was ever pro-Germany post-World War II at any point. It was just that He was like a very like mine, and I think he basically, I'll paraphrase, but he was like, "Hey, there's this German guy called Hitler. It sounds like he might actually be onto the right idea here." And it was like, that's what I've kind of been trying to talk about. And maybe he was like, "Ooh, I should have bit my tongue a little bit." But it didn't really hurt too much because he still had multiple cities named after him, which was surprising to me. Is that this book, the book series on Tarzan, was known as like the best-selling fiction or like the most widely known fiction book for a long period of time, and that Burroughs, in addition to Tarzan, is credited with inspiring a lot of early science fiction novelists. He's even put into the same category, almost shoulder to shoulder, with like H.P. Lovecraft, although for a separate reason, in that he also wrote a lot of violence between men and women, where like men are like violently beating women in his books. That was one of the reasons that he gets lumped in with Lovecraft sometimes.
Well, of course, there's John Carter, and me being a sci-fi guy, that always got my attention a little more. I even liked the movie they made 10 years ago. I didn't think it was that bad, but yeah, I guess that's now we're going to throw the grown aristocrat on a different planet, and he's going to rise above. So I guess it's basically the same general thing. We're not going baby level on that one, but we are sending a. I think the movie changes it though. The movie makes him American. I think I don't remember. I haven't seen it in a while. No, he's in Burroughs. He's a veteran of the American Civil War. Okay, that's interesting. Is that him trying to do it for the Americans now?
I mean, I think that it was, if you look at the Disney movie, right? The people that come, Jane and her father Porter, and even Clayton, like they are all clearly from British aristocracy.
No, I had changed my thought to Burroughs, John Carter, where I was like, oh, did he do it again? Where he put a British person? No, in that case, actually, it is an American Civil War lieutenant or something.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the same plot. It's just now it's an American badass, kind of like Buck Rogers, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we still
like
have those, right?
Imagine like a really racist Buck Rogers. If isn't Buck Rogers already probably racist? I don't
know. Let's see. I feel like Flash Gordon is the one that gets a little more like questionable. Yeah, because Flash Gordon's got Ming the Merciless, and it's hard to remake Flash Gordon because now you have to do Ming the Merciless. That's why they had so much trouble doing the Mandarin, in the Marvel movies. Although I did love the Kingsley one. That was great.
Yeah, and they wisely left out any non-white people in this entire movie. They just don't even address the fact, because that's another big thing in Tarzan, is that in the original book, I think it was like chapter 13 or something. I might be pulling that out of my ass, but there's a chapter where these explorers, they come across where Tarzan's actually living in the jungle, and the sign basically, so I found the exact phrase. It says it says, be warned, this is the house of Tarzan, killer of beasts and many black men. Do not harm things which are Tarzan's. Tarzan watches. Yeah, that was chapter 13 of the book. So this is another very clear reference to, that's not just Tarzan being superior and king of the jungle, but he's also superior to all other races, in particular black men.
Yeah, I guess that's where the Jungle Book could kind of, have the village nearby, because, Mowgli's of the village. So there's no distinction, where here, if you tried to do that in 1999, you'd have some very angry people, rightfully so.
Right. And what's also interesting dichotomy here, though, because Tarzan can't really be black either, because that is equally problematic, maybe even more so, right? Because now if you've got a black guy that's living with a bunch of gorillas and acting like a gorilla, like that becomes incredibly derogatory, because of a whole other line of thinking from British aristocracy and eugenics, right? So Tarzan fits in this really weird spot, which again, the fascinating part to me is just that how this became a 1999 major animation from Disney with, Happy Meals toys and Game Gear games and everything. Like it got the full-blown treatment. And again, I hate saying this over and over, but it seems harder for Tarzan to have been like remade like today as a brand new, like you're doing what? You're going to revive what book from the early 1900s? Let's look into this guy before you get too far down this path. It feels like it might have gotten stopped in its tracks at some point. I don't know. Maybe Tarzan had so much nostalgic, influence that it gets a pass. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Tarzan's one of those things where it just kind of pops up in a random film every 5 years or so, just like Hercules or King Arthur, right? There's just like none of them ever seem to take. I mean, this is I guess this is the most popular Tarzan film. I mean, there's the Weissmuller ones, but those are from the 30s. So that's, in the 30s, they were popular. Later films, Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lure of the Apes in 1984. I remember not liking that very much.
Well, and this is really interesting too, that his daughter, Burroughs' daughter, Joan, ends up marrying the Tarzan film actor. So there, and this begins like a really weird like interweaving of like different Hollywood marriages, because he also ends up marrying some other actress when like Tarzan starts to pick up essentially. And so in Burroughs in his late 60s, I found this research that the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, right? Well, I forgive you, Matt. And he actually applies to be a war correspondent because he's like so passionate about World War II and the entry into it, which is another interesting thing here, because I don't know, war correspondent that's already like nationally, internationally known has now military connections. It just feels like this is another instance of a fiction writer that turns into Disney movies that might have had some military intelligence background at some point. Which
looks like
probably
George Clooney hanging out in Sudan a few years ago. What was he doing there?
I mean, seriously, this is a really weird thread that I never expected when we started the series. I never expected that so many of these movies would be based on military intelligence, either the original writers or people involved with the production or more than that. So, and then I got one other note here that he ends up marrying, I believe, someone that works in the a movie about the Johnstown flood in 1926, and the Johnstown flood is it's a conspiracy theory that doesn't come up enough because no one ever talks about this very specific thing. With the Johnstown flood, it was the first, I think, stateside event that the Red Cross got involved in. So, and it was like the first one to like legitimize the Red Cross as this nonprofit sort of quasi, like federal organization in a weird way. But it was the Johnstown flood. But what's really interesting about the Johnstown flood is that there are some theories that it was all like an inside job, that it was like they intentionally weakened the dam and they intentionally overloaded everything to flood this town so that like I believe it was like a Carnegie affiliated steel company, so that they could just like expand a little bit more and not have to worry, because this entire town was essentially downstream from where the steel mill was, and they were using the water as part of their manufacturing process, and it was just inconvenient for the factory for this town to exist. So the Johnstown flood happens, and everyone that lives there kind of gets screwed over, but the steel mill ends up coming out ahead, and so does the Red Cross, because they get to sort of like flex their guns and establish themselves. So anyway, I'm not going to go into a super deep rabbit hole, but yeah, Johnstown flood is one of the earliest American philanthropic conspiracy theories that you can get into.
Well, they were doing similar stuff in California, right? With the Los Angeles water wars of the 1920s, which are relatively well documented. Also, people weakening floods, trying to do that sort of thing. Of course, that was more like in the desert, so I guess there weren't as many towns. So it
almost like adjacent to the Roger Rabbit movie, right? With like the highway and
yeah, or more specifically, Chinatown. Chinatown deals with that, directly. Yeah. Right. William Mulholland, that was his thing. His name's still all over LA.
and speaking of names all over LA, there's Tarzania that's in LA, which is named after Burroughs because of how popular Tarzan became. And there's another town in Texas named after him as well. So and he's got a crater on the freaking moon named after him. So this just goes to show how popular Tarzan and Burroughs really were, and how much of an impact that he made. And if you look at all the other sort of like older science fiction writers, the ones that were writing in Strange Tales and Weird Science, or maybe not Weird Science, but you know what I mean, the older magazines, a lot of them were looking up to Burroughs as being this inspiration, because Tarzan also represented, as some of these other writers were phrasing it, it's like this new character, this new archetype of the white man that can just go out and do anything, like just enter the unknown. And I guess sort of like the space version, right? The American space version.
Yeah. Actually, I want to go over those recent ones one more time because of what you said, and pair the movie with the actor. By the way, it's more of like a 15-20 year cycle, not 5. I was being too snarky with that. But yeah, we keep getting every once in a while we get like a Tarzan movie that no one's really asking for. So Greystoke is 1984. Christopher Lambert is our Uber mention, that one, which is a kind of interesting choice. So maybe a couple of years before Highlander.
Highlander is a great reference. Yeah.
Yeah, because Highlander is 86, 87, but it kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's an interesting choice. Here's one that doesn't sound great. Tarzan and the Lost City from 1998, starring Casper Van Dien as Tarzan, which that sounds like the most 90s movie ever somehow. Tried to capture the flavor of the later novels where the ape men encountered increasingly fantastic civilizations, which I guess that's going to be Atlantis in a few weeks when we get to that. But steampunk instead of Tarzan.
I'm excited about that one.
I am too. I love that movie, by the way. And I'll say, I guess, when we do that, but we watched that once when my daughter was young, did not take with her. So I was like, don't you want to see that one again? Don't you want to see that one again? No. The other one, the latest one, is 2016, The Legend of Tarzan, with Alexander Skarsgård as Tarzan. So, that's one of those movies that doesn't exist anymore after like less than a decade, I think. So apologies if you're a big fan of that one, but it is weird that it's like in the 80s, when all 80s and 90s, where, like Back to the Future 3 or something, when it's like, what all the kids want now? A Western. It's like, no, they don't.
I like that one a lot. I really
Back to the Future 3 is great, but not necessarily, it's
not
like,
because of the theme, not because it's a Western, in spite of it being a Western. But this is also Youngbloods, I think, had come out.
Yes.
And there was like a female version of Youngbloods that had Drew Barrymore and a few other people in it. I can't remember the name of it. There was a number of these, like Wyatt Earp, I think, had come out. Tombstone had come out. Unforgiven had come out. Someone was trying to push a resurgence of the Western films.
Well, I'm really speaking specifically of the unrelated franchise that would then like take a left turn into Western, which is why I brought it Back to the Future. But yeah, obviously, because like Tombstone, Unforgiven, those are just great straight Western.
Fievel Goes West is another version, right?
Yeah. That one for sure is like, why that would be a little bit Spielberg's fault, wouldn't it? So Tarzan seems like another one that Hollywood keeps, like, and maybe it's just because it's free IP, it's public domain and you can just play with it.
Well, and it just owns space in almost everyone's brain. Even if you don't have an affinity to Tarzan, if you hear that, like, like if you just hear that, everyone knows that that's the Tarzan yell. It's such a archetype of this like IP. Like before Disney was even around and inventing these characters that you could just kind of, make like a little voice or just whistle and know who you're talking about. Tarzan was there first. Like Tarzan owned all of this. And even like I found one of the quotes. This is Ray Bradbury, and Ray Bradbury talking about Burroughs, saying that Burroughs was the most influential writer in the entire history of the world. He gave romance and adventure to a whole generation of boys, caused them to go out and decide to become something special. Like that's a pretty damn high praise from Ray Bradbury, saying like that this guy is one of the most influential writers in the world. And this isn't just because of Tarzan. It's also because I think he innovated some of the early concepts of a hollow earth theory, some that are even cited today by hollow earth conspiracy theorists, because his had a very particular flavor that was kind of based on the characters of Tarzan and some of the ideas that he had of Tarzan, and it sort of veered away from some of Jules Verne's versions of, you know, Journey into the Center of the Earth. That like the Burroughs version is no steampunk. Like imagine like a steampunk free version of Hollow Earth, and that's kind of what gets cited way more often, even in modern day, when people are like, "Hey, have you heard this Hollow Earth theory?" I guarantee you, at some point, they're going to be talking about a writing that's based on Burroughs' work.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering about the second death when people forget who you are, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just saying here, like up to the point where Burroughs dies, he's probably the most influential writer ever. But to a lot of people now, you're going to say Burroughs, and they'll probably work out after a second or two who you're saying. But if you say Jules Verne or Lovecraft or Shakespeare, there's no, you know, just boom, I know that. Even if I didn't
you say
read
Burroughs,
that.
I'm thinking William S. Burroughs. I'm not thinking of Tarzan Burroughs. But if you say Tarzan forever, you're going to know who Tarzan is, I assume. So does the second death apply the same way as if because I almost feel like Tarzan prevents Burroughs from dying that second death until someone says Tarzan for the last time.
Well, let's take Jules Verne again. Okay, Captain Nemo, of course. Other than that, though, I'm like, no, I'm not thinking of his characters. I'm just thinking of Jules Verne or Frank Baum. You know, he did all the Oz books, so he's got a lot more characters like Burroughs or something. Of course, I guess Frank Baum isn't necessarily a roll off the tongue name. Now it's again the Wizard of Oz and those characters.
He doesn't get the second death anyway, because I think he was a Rosicrucian, so he probably became an ascended master, so he doesn't have to worry about all this mundane stuff.
Oh, okay, there we go. He should have joined Sea Org, and he'd be good for a billion years.
Well, they didn't have Sea Org around at that time. They were still working on
it. Good point. Let's see. I'm just having a look at my notes. Sometimes I look at the note and I'm like, ooh, why'd I write that? This scene is how at least 587 pornographic movies start, and I may be lowballing that number. Okay. I guess there's a horny scene between Tarzan and Jane. Yeah.
Isn't that just like every scene?
Yeah. Okay. Good point. That's probably why I got to writing that note. To
know, but the very first scene in which Tarzan meets Jane in this movie, he ends up looking up her skirt. It's like the second thing that he does.
Yeah, I guess this is the horniest Disney movie up to date. Maybe because you have a man running around mostly naked who has correct musculature.
An adult man. Yeah, my assumption is that he's like in his 20s when we kind of see him. They don't really state exactly how old he is.
The wiki states a 20-year-old man. So
okay, yeah, he doesn't seem like he's 14. Like, this is an adult man and an adult woman, and she's clearly infatuated with him. And he is very much a brute. So yeah, this is probably the horniest Disney pairing so far, especially since they both seem like mutually into it. This isn't a Beauty and the Beast situation where like your dad married you off to, you know, some brute.
Let's see. Minnie Driver was voicing Jane. So I guess a lot of people had a crush on her in the late 90s. A little freckly for me, but I'm saying that because I'm very freckly. So that's always been like a turn off. Glenn Close as Kala. Okay, that's a big hitter, but not a voice actor. Rosie O'Donnell is Turk.
That's probably the worst part of the movie, I just gotta say.
Yeah, she counts. I think Rosie O'Donnell counts as a voice actor, but a bad voice actor, because she does a lot of voice acting, and usually it's
and in some movies it's not bad. In this movie, it's bad. Like, it just doesn't fit the voice of. Is Turk supposed to be a fat lesbian gorilla, or is Turk supposed to be a dude?
The character was originally written as a male gorilla, but after O'Donnell's audition, Turk was recharacterized as a female.
Okay, so I honestly did not get that Turk was supposed to be a female at any point until Rosie O'Donnell takes over, because you see Turk growing up, right? And it's got a younger voice, a non-Rosie O'Donnell voice. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait, why is Turk speaking? Why is Turk doing an impression of Rosie O'Donnell? It's a great impression, but why is he doing it? It doesn't fit at all.
Now, Clayton, the villain, was voiced by Brian Blessed, which is awesome. He was the Hawkman and Flash Gordon, King of the Hawkman, Flash Gordon. I do the Space 1999 podcast where he shows up several times, and yeah, he's just one of those English, theater dudes that doesn't fail to deliver.
And his character in this particular movie is incredibly nefarious. He's like one of the most calculating villains. And again, he's not like a supernatural villain, which is very out of character for these Disney movies. Aside from that, there's talking animals. That's kind of a granted. But this guy, he basically lures Tarzan onto a boat. And then as soon as he gets on the boat, they capture him. And he tells them, like, I just needed to get you out of the way. So now I can go and capture all of the gorillas. Now, he does the James Bond villain thing where he tells them, like, why he's doing the thing. But it's interesting because it works really well, because that does end up helping him go and try and capture all these gorillas. Of course, it's a Disney movie, so Tarzan has to win. But like the plan worked, man. Like he had a great plan and he executed on it. He was like a professional about it. He knew exactly what to do, how to do it, and executed. The only downside was, if you're a villain in a Disney movie, it doesn't work.
You know what? Since we're just talking about him and again, the voice actor, I will direct the listener, if you feel like it, as a guy that does a Space 1999 podcast, to Death's Other Dominion, which features him as a calculating sort of maybe villain. Well, he's a villain, but yeah, doing, mind control techniques, destroying people's minds, that sort of thing. So Death's Other Dominion has that sauce in it as well, which is
a very MK
fun.
Ultra of him.
Yes. Yeah, there's like they're living in these ice caves or whatever, and one level under is all the people just like aimlessly walking around because he destroyed all their minds.
I mean, Hollow Earth theory. We're right back at it.
Yeah. So I'll point people in that direction. Kerchak, the Tarzan's adoptive father, Lance Hendrickson. That's kind of fun. Again, not a voice actor. Probably makes more sense when you see him, but sure, why not?
Not a lot of lines either, because he's just like a grumpy guy that doesn't talk often. And that's basically like everyone avoids him. So no one wants to interact with him because he's just a grump.
And I'm going to see if you can complete this sentence. Tantor, the elephant, was voiced by?
I don't know.
Okay, Wayne Knight. That kind of Newman complaining voice. Which I
like that. Honestly, the only voice that didn't match here was the Rosie O'Donnell voice.
Yeah. This is a funny little factoid on Tantor, though. They hired Woody Allen to voice him, and then Katzenberg drug him away to do Ants instead. So, although I guess in 2024, not having Woody Allen in your movie is not necessarily like a bad point.
Yeah, I don't know if Woody Allen would have elevated this or any other Disney movie. In fact, I'm kind of glad he got cordoned off to the Bugs Life movie.
Or the Ants movie, the fake Bugs Life, the revenge Bugs Life,
the fake Bugs Life movie,
a life of revenge. Although
see how good that strategy was, though, is like in my mind, they're both just the same movie. There's just one that has a different name to it. You know what I mean? Like they're so damn similar.
Well, they both have wonky animation, right? Yeah, that is interesting. I was going to bring that up earlier, but Pixar seems to be like an easy bridge from watching Disney as a kid to watching Disney with your kids. It's like in the meantime, because you were mentioning, I was like, oh yeah, well, I was still watching stuff. I guess I'm nuts. I'm like, well, I wasn't watching the mainline Disney stuff. I was just keeping up with Pixar for like 10 or 15 years, So,
and a lot of that is just to see like, ooh, what kind of cool new rendering techniques does it look like now? Because there's clearly Toy Story when it came out was impressive. But in retrospect, it's like, maybe not that impressive compared to what we've got now, but being able to see all that progression from movie to movie to movie, specifically with Pixar, it was just your way of like keeping your thumb on the pulse of what happens if Disney throws all their money at whatever the latest technology is. What would that look like? And they kind of establish that standard. Like you would wait on Disney to release a major film to see like where we were at 3D wise, or a Spielberg movie, essentially.
Well, there's also kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was just like kind of that in the air tonight, the idea that basically Pixar makes perfect stories. They hammer them out till they're perfect. And, by the time you get to Brave, not a bad movie, but by the time you get to there, you're like, okay, they don't always structure these things perfectly.
I don't know if they ever did. I think that's just a really good extra bit of marketing to just.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I have not. One, because we'll be watching them eventually, but I haven't seen the last 5 or 6 Pixar movies.
It's a moment in time. I think everyone goes through it. Everyone will go through a phase where Pixar is like the thing that you're looking towards. Maybe not. Maybe that's like some boomer talk.
I guess it was because you could say the marketing strategy or the serendipity of it all. But yeah, I was like right at the age where you would make that leap right when Pixar showed up. So I was like, it was like here the car just drives up and you get into it.
Yeah, now it's just a TikTok filter. That's where everyone looks to see where the latest advancements are.
Unless they can't anymore. I guess that's in the news again. Every couple of years. I'm a boomer now. I don't know anything about TikTok, to be perfectly honest. It's not on my phone. I've never been on it. Yeah, I don't really. What do you do? Do you dance on it? See, I sound like a boomer.
Yeah, you dance on it. They actually are getting into like the live selling market a little bit too. Like they really push it hard, where they want you to when you're dancing, they essentially want you to hold up like the coffee K-cups that you're selling. So there's like a little link on the bottom, and you just click it, and it automatically orders it, and it's a whole thing. But that's kind of where the transition is, because a lot of these weird social media companies, they don't figure out how to make money for the longest time. Like they'll be in operation and have millions and billions of users, and then just be like, okay, now let's figure out how to monetize this. And I think TikTok is starting to get around to that now. Beyond just regular advertisements and the whole data scraping for the Chinese government thing. I mean, that's probably a pretty good business for them.
I mean, I know we have TikTok in Japan. Of course, we have TikTok in Japan, but the one here, Line. Are you familiar with Line?
No.
Okay, that's basically the main social media that people use to communicate with message each other and stuff in Japan. Also, I'm sure China's data mining. That might be a Chinese. See, I'm not even sure if it's a Chinese company, but yeah, they've monetized in Japan basically by making cute characters and marketing them. So now the characters are really popular.
They're everywhere, man. I pretty much assume that China's on every single mobile device across the planet.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just we all walk. We walk around with trackers, and we all know it.
You know what we need to do is we need to go and airdrop some aristocrat British babies into China and just let them grow up and just dominate that place. That's probably what they're missing.
Where did I go? I went somewhere last week. I was only gone like 30 minutes, but forgot my phone, and I was like, oh, actually, this is kind of nice. I don't have my phone on me. I mean, hopefully I don't run into an emergency, but hey, there were the first 30 years of my life where I also could have run into an emergency. So what's the difference?
I mean, imagine how much better Tarzan could protect his tribe if they had cell phones, though. And there's a interesting note here that when Tarzan gets kidnapped on that boat, he's wearing shoes, and like he's got like a suit on and like leather shoes, like nice ones. But this kind of domesticated version of Tarzan, it basically takes all of his power away. He can't climb anymore. He can't use his weird little like monkey feet anymore. So it's almost like
Tom Cruise could show him up at that point.
He could. Well, he didn't get to practice in the shoes. He never had to wear shoes before. But it's going to show that he's the master of this world without cell phones. But the second he enters a world where everyone else has got cell phones, like now, all of his superpowers are gone immediately. So he only reigns supreme in a world where technology doesn't exist. So you might feel good without having your cell phone, but ultimately you are a weaker person for it in modern society, unless you yourself went out into, the jungle with the rice fields or something.
I just watched the 1963 Kurosawa film High and Low for a podcast. Japanese title's Heaven and Hell, but it's like a kind of a procedural kidnapping story, and using Google Earth, because there's a sequence where they're taking the kid that had been kidnapped and are trying to retrace like where he had been. And basically I figured it out using Google Earth before they did in the movie. I just took a little pause and wait a minute, Indochina Island, I know where that is. I start, doing the 3D and getting the angles because the boy had made a picture. And I'm like, oh, I found the house before they did in the movie.
Well, they had to stretch it out. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a movie, right?
Well, they didn't have Google Earth in 1963, did they? Very good movie, by the way. But but I was just like, yeah, this Kate, it's one of those things where so many movies is like, if they had a cell phone, they would have solved it. Like this wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, seriously, what happens if Tarzan is born, in the jungle, but he has a gun? Like, is it the same story?
He has a little robot companion. That would change the story a lot.
Yeah, just like a little drone that takes everyone out for him.
Yeah, actually, this is one where it kind of did annoy me that they changed the ending of the book so much. I'm like, no, Tarzan does have to be ripped out of the jungle and taken back to British society. If not, even, for Burroughs' eugenics kick to work properly, he has to return, and you have to see, oh, he's still like, the picture of a British aristocrat. He's lived in a jungle. He's back. He's fully in place with us. It's part of the pantheon. That's the ending of the story.
Well, and actually, that's another really great segue into another aspect of this, that him being reincorporated into society. This was something that they were also doing with feral children. There was a lot of famous cases at like the end of the 18th century and at the beginning of the 19th century. Like all these different reports of kids that would be abandoned out in the wilderness and raised by either wolves or just eating grubs, kind of like a Tarzan, sort of without the apes to kind of raise him. And that when they would find these feral children, they always used it at this huge experiment, like a public experiment, to prove this concept of like the Enlightenment, where you can take any human being that's capable of learning and teach them language and teach them philosophy and teach them all of these things, and they would elevate, and they would actually do this to real feral children as proof, like that this was like the prime sort of thing that you could go and prove whatever theory or wacko philosophy that you're working on. If you could teach that to a feral person and then have them recite it and then develop because of it, then it was almost like you had the proof. You would get on Oprah's Next Book Club, essentially. I don't know who the Oprah was at this time. So it's the exact same thing with Tarzan, where if you find Tarzan, who was very clearly a feral person, right? Like a feral for 20 years, which is probably unheard of in terms of feral cases. I think most of the time they find them around like 12 or 13 at the very latest. And usually they're only feral for maybe like 6 to 7 years. It's not like the entire time that they're all gone. But yeah, so retraining and basically like breaking them back into society would be a logical conclusion to this Tarzan, to prove that he really was a British aristocrat all along, because otherwise he just stays as this like subhuman thing.
Well, it's in contrast with the Pocahontas thing, where he talked about how she ended up in England. And it's like, well, look, she can play like she's part of our culture, but she's not really.
Right. It was like, look at how smart we are that we can even like have this savage pretend like they're one of us. Like that was kind of parading her around like that, right? But Tarzan's the opposite. It's like, look, we sent one of our own into the savage jungles, and he came back, superior. He conquered that jungle, and here he is, pouring tea just like the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm sure you've read Brave New World, yes.
Yeah, I actually read that recently.
Okay.
I don't want to get into it.
Anyway, I'm just assuming you have. I'm just like when I read it in high school, it's kind of like, you just take Soma and live in the high-tech city. That's fine. But yeah, you get older and you're like, no, I do want to live with it. I want to live with the savages, because they call them the savages in there, where they live in the desert and quote Shakespeare.
Yeah, one of the OGs for this like I want to say apocalyptic, but definitely dystopian novels, right?
Yeah. So I was don't want to go too deep into Huxley this deep into our podcast. We'll save that for another time. But just to
speaking of eugenics, man, the Huxley Foundation,
right.
Even modern day, especially Julian Huxley, they were probably reading the original Tarzan and like, I know what this guy's putting out. They knew how to read between the lines, and because again, I guess I'll just hammer it in, right? Like this is the only time we'll get into Burroughs and Tarzan, but there's another story where he finds a civilization, I believe in like Hollow Earth, that had been isolated for over 2,000 years, and because it was basically like a huge society that had almost no variety in it, there was no crime. And it was this point that he was again making of like, if just the British were to keep themselves, then nothing bad would happen, and it was only the introduction of any sort of outside culture that would completely destroy this whole system, even for 2,000 years straight. Which is
Japanese still kind of think that there's not that many foreigners here.
I mean, dude, monocultures, if you look, like they're problematic, but they've got results. Like they have the proof in the pudding for some of these monocultures. A lot of the people will bring that up, like, well, look at Switzerland or look at how well Japan's doing. It's like, yeah, let's look at the demographics of these places.
I mean, there's still things, that the stresses, societal stress can be so great. There's always like weird random stabbings in the news, or someone's taking care of their elderly parents and then they just straight up murder them one day. That happens a lot in the Japanese news, because there's a lot of pent up. One of my other long-term expat friend were like, yeah, Japan's a great place to live as long as you're not Japanese. But that's the thing.
Old Japanese.
I don't have to adopt every part of Japanese culture, and I get to kind of abandon the problem. Yeah, I'm part of the problem.
You're ruining their monoculture. Like you single-handedly are helping deteriorate the monoculture of Japan.
Yeah. But then I can kind of leave behind the things I don't like about American culture and, choose the best of both worlds, which is, kind of nice. That's my trip. Yeah. That's my secret sauce, I guess.
Well, I don't think you're going to become king of the jungle at any point.
No, I don't want jungle rot. I did take a 20K walk through the jungle a few months ago, though. That was fun. I felt like Tarzan a little bit, listen to podcasts. We were staying on one of the Okinawan Islands company trip, and we drove away from the resort to do an izakaya dinner. And I actually stood up before we did anything. Before I've had a drop to drink, I'm probably walking back. Because I was like, if I've had a few drinks and said it, they'd be like, oh, he's drunk,
I got to ask you one thing that blew my mind when I was looking into this. Who would win in a fight in the real world between a gorilla and a tiger? Who do you think would win?
I feel like tiger's faster. The gorilla, I think the gorilla can't move fast enough. I give it to the tiger, I think.
That's right. But it's specific that if a tiger attacks first, the tiger wins basically every time. But if a gorilla can sneak up on a tiger, then the gorilla wins in those cases, just because of intelligence, and they can just like do a fatal blow pretty quickly. But yeah, it seems that every time, because I was wondering at the very beginning of the Tarzan movie, the mom, of Tarzan, the surrogate mom, is protecting him from this tiger at all costs and is constantly just like running away. And I was just wondering, like, couldn't she just like beat the hell out of this tiger? So the answer is no, she couldn't beat the hell out of the tiger. The tiger wins.
Oh yeah. You don't want to screw with the tiger in any case. What was that, the whole point of Life of Pi until it turned out to be his dad or something? I don't really remember what the thing was there. What is the tiger's name? One more time. The tiger doesn't talk, does he?
The tiger does not talk because the tiger is very specifically non-anthropomorphic, because Tarzan kills the tiger in the movie. So I was just thinking, like, it would have made Tarzan maybe lose a little bit of sympathy points if he's out here killing anthropomorphic animals that look like they might be part human. So they keep the tiger looking incredibly animalistic. They keep the eyes spread apart. They don't give him like the big wide-eyed treatment that makes him cute. Like there's nothing cute about the tiger whatsoever. It's just like this big bag of muscles. And I think that's intentionally done so that when Tarzan kills it, nobody feels bad about it.
Just because someone's probably been screaming at us for 5 minutes now, Sabor is a leopard.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Just in case someone. No, I was just thinking, was he a cheetah? I think I remember seeing spots on him, and so I looked it up, and we're both wrong. He's a leopard. Okay,
I'm gonna keep calling him a tiger.
Jungle.
I don't care. I'm gonna keep calling him a tiger.
Great jungle cats. Okay, you can call him a tiger, but just if anyone cares, yes, we have worked out Sabor's actual nomenclature. That doesn't feel right.
He's a tiger. You were wrong. Everyone that thinks it's not a tiger is the one that's wrong.
Right. Do you have any other things you want to put out on this one? I feel like it's probably about time to put the kibosh on. I mean,
you already dropped the word Ubermensch, which was perfect. Yeah. Again, the name Tarzan literally means white skin. That's what it translates to.
Well,
in the original book.
I guess. Although he'd probably be pretty tan living in the jungle.
He does, but I mean, he only becomes tan because he has that original British aristocrat. And I wonder if that makes him superior too, that when he goes back to Britain and he's got this like bronzed, tan going on, if that makes him superior or if that makes him inferior to other British aristocrats.
I think there's a change in that because in the 19th century, the tan would have been seen as gauche or whatever, because that means you're a worker, you're in the fields. Once there's a little more travel, aristocrat and wealthy people can start going to tropical resorts and play tennis and things like that. The tan started to become more accepted in the upper class society. So it was like when the entertainment options became more tropical and outdoorsy. Now it shows you have money because you can go out and get a tan.
So my final two notes that I got written down here is just to give a little bit more context and some of the more like flippant sounding things about Burroughs. So one of them is that he wrote a column for the Los Angeles Examiner that explicitly called for the extermination of, quote, moral imbeciles and relatives, which is a very eugenics-y thing to do, essentially. And that he also wrote an essay called I See a New Race. And it was essentially that any inferior races were destined to become extinct out of moral reasons, that it was the only moral thing to do was to make sure that all inferior races, in the opinion of Burroughs, to just become extinct over time. And then there's a specific story called Tarzan and the Ant-Men, where these like fictional tribe of like ant-men that display their social dominance by beating their women into submission. And that's like the entire story of, and that's the one in particular that people tend to lump into some of H.P. Lovecraft's work. But yeah, I guess that could be the sequel to the Ants movie, Ants 2. It might be like written by Burroughs, and it's just about I don't know. It would be interesting. Dude, that's like William S. Burroughs teams up with Tarzan Burroughs to make Ants 2.
I want the naked ant featuring Tarzan.
It's not far away, man. I think a couple years we'll be able to just plug it into a search engine somewhere and watch it.
Yeah. Anyway, other than the television series, this film did begat a Broadway adaptation that I'd never heard of, and 2 direct-to-video follow-ups, Tarzan and Jane and Tarzan 2. So we will not be revisiting Tarzan. If we are scraping the Disney direct-to-video barrel of 1994 to 2008, we're going to have a really bad time.
But we've got other things we can grow into from here, I think.
Yeah. Then we got a couple that did end up theatrical, like Doug's first movie, Jungle Book 2, A Return to Neverland. So we'll get a little bit of the direct-to-video.
I would almost rather do like a Touchstone and just be like, okay, let's do adult Disney, which is essentially Touchstone, right?
Yeah, because Pulp Fiction is technically a Disney film.
Just like Insane Clown Posse, Great Malenko is technically a Disney album.
Yeah. Just put different branding on it. Branding is everything, right? I guess we will wind this one down then. If you want to maybe tell us what next for us is Toy Story 2. So one that I definitely am, more. Sometimes I'm not that excited about watching these movies. Tarzan, I was somewhere in the middle. I was kind of like, I got this Mission Impossible TV box set. I want to watch that. I got to watch Tarzan. Well, that's fine.
It wasn't
60s.
bad. Coming up on it, I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't really, if I did see it, I didn't pay much attention. And I was kind of dreading it just a little bit because it was like an hour and 38 minutes
Yeah,
or so.
that's
A
I was looking
little
at the
bit
time.
longer. But it wasn't a bad watch, man. I think it was a decent movie. And I actually did the research before I started watching it. So the fact that I knew that this entire story was about eugenics made it a little bit more of an interesting watch because I'm like, pointing stuff out and noticing things way differently than if it had just been an innocuous Disney movie in the background at first.
Yeah. For those keeping track now, we're at the end of the 90s. I guess Hunchback is the one where I, looking back, I'm like, wow, that one was really good. And I never really given that one much credit. So I guess that's the one that I've sort of uncovered. Not that that's, everyone knows that movie, but I just hadn't seen it properly and straight through. So.
Yeah, so far a lot of good surprises. Hunchback and Milan, I think, are some of the standouts as being way better than I expected or remembered.
Yeah, Milan definitely stood out. And actually some of the Tarzan got reasonably positive reviews, but a few of them were like, oh, Milan felt more epic and stuff. So I guess
yeah, I mean it's kind of hard visually. Like the biggest like visual break from just being in the jungle all time is he goes to like the water and there's like hippopotamus and an elephant there.
Boat.
But but otherwise, man, you're just looking at green and brown for damn near the entire movie.
Maybe that's the other reason I would have liked to see a little bit more of the book take back home just for the contrast, which is the point of the book, I guess, but for nefarious reasons.
So, yeah,
but
other than that, the big things going on is that Sam Tripoli is going to be coming to Florida and doing a live comedy show and book signing for the Chaos Twins. So if anyone is in Central Florida area, I know it's a tiny little niche now. Matt, you're open invite if you want to come to the comedy show in Central Florida on March 30th. But yeah, chaostwins.com is where you can find that comic that's kind of been doing really well and exploding. And if you just go to paranoidamerican.com, you'll be able to see all the newest and latest stuff that I've got going on. This year is particularly busy. Every single month now for the rest of the year, I'm going to be releasing something new. So the one coming up in next week, I think on March 22nd, is going to be chosenone.com issue 2. As soon as that's over, I'm going to be releasing Illuminati series. After that's over, I'm going to be releasing Never a Straight Answer, which is one that a lot of people have been waiting on, including me, for a very long time to come out. And they're just going to keep coming out after, back to back to back. So just go to paranoidamerican.com and sign up and buy all the things.
All right. As for me, I do a lot of other podcasting. I mentioned the Space 1999 one. That's Podcast 1999. Talking about the Twilight Zone at Time Enough Podcast and really good movies and really bad movies at Films and Filth. And if you want to check that out, maybe head for Patreon at Podcastio Podcastius. Yeah, I guess I'm going to take a run through the jungle. I'll take a walk through the jungle and not like Creedence.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all of that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe a language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution to flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.